Welcome to Your Visionary Podcast. This podcast is specifically for you and your vision. Get ready to grow. Let's go.
Life is in the detour, so every detour we experience, that's an opportunity to learn something.
You sell yourself. Doesn't matter if you're selling ice in Alaska or if you're selling sugarcane in Haiti. They're going to buy from you.
And all of this knowledge is in captivity when it should be out in the world. He couldn't believe that I had 25 years, but the way I carried myself, you'd have thought I had 25 days left.
We try to be something so great, and we forget that we're just being humans. We're human beings, and it's like we're enough right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Your Visionary Podcast. Today we have a very special episode. We have Dr. Pamela Antoinette, super female entrepreneur. How are you doing, Dr. Pamela?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing well. So I want to thank you for your time and just coming on and sharing your energy and your story with my listeners. I really appreciate it. And I don't want to tell them what you do. I want you to explain all the things that you do because you are the super female entrepreneur in my eyes.
I love that. Well, just to give you, I guess, an overarching view or category of what I do, it's I help people live out whatever their life dreams and purpose is. And that's really vague. But when we put it in practical terms, I have a life coach training academy. So for people who want to become certified life coaches. I also have a publishing company for people who want to publish their books, so it allows them to tell their stories, live out their purpose through that means. I am also a radio host, so I impart information to people based on the research that I do. So I probably should have said first that I'm a college professor and a researcher and an author. So many things. Yes, so I do a lot of compiling of information and data and content, and I use that, in my radio show. I use that in my books. I use that in the Coach Training Academy. And so it kind of really, I guess, stems from my love of writing. That's really where it all started for me.
That's awesome. And so how we usually start this off by asking, what is your purpose statement?
So I don't have an actual formal purpose statement, but I do have a purpose, which is definitely to help people live out the greatest version of themselves. And I do that pretty much with every facet of what I do, whether it's being a college professor and working with students, or training, running a training company, or publishing. Those are all ways in which I help people live out their purpose.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I always believe that it's important to just find your purpose, find your passion in whatever you do, or make sure whatever you do, you're hitting that core purpose.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
Yeah. And so people ask me, when it comes to podcasting, they ask me how do I meet my guests. And so I wanted to share how I met you.
Yes, please.
Yeah, it was my entrepreneurship class, 4001. It was our task to go to 6 events outside of campus. And so they gave us a link of all, business-related events. And I saw your event. It was called a writer, entrepreneur.
Yeah, act like a writer, think like an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and so my passion is writing as well. And so when I saw that, I was like, okay, I had to go to that. And it's in Lawrenceville.
Yeah.
And so I ended up coming, and I loved it. All the things that I learned, it was so great. I still have the handouts.
Awesome.
That you passed out. And then afterwards, I just went up to you and introduced myself and told you that I was a student, that I loved writing, and then asked you if I can take you out to lunch and just learn more about you.
Yeah.
And then from there, it just went on, and we just built a friendship. And so that's why you're here today.
Yeah. And a partnership,
Yeah,
so yeah.
Partnership, and I learned that the importance of just relationships and not being fearful. Not thinking that just because you're a student, you're not valuable.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So. I learned all that, through meeting you. And I want to ask, how do you just balance everything that you do? Because you did say, all the things that you do, and it is a lot. So how do you really create that balance in your life?
That's a good question. I have a way of fiercely defending or protecting my boundaries and making sure that I build in time for myself. And so I use this planner over there, and that planner is everything. I know a lot of people are big on technology, and I am myself. But I decided to move away from the technological planner and go to a physical planner, and that thing has changed my life. So I'm able to open up, the month of January and have it sitting right before me and say, okay, so I see what my month is going to look like. And so I avoid scheduling, more than, 2 to 3 meetings a day, and they are never back to back. I shouldn't say never, but I try not to make them back to back. I try to give myself some time in between. But I am really particular about how I schedule my time because things always come up. And so I want to make sure that I have the room built into my schedule to accommodate, things that I just don't know are going to come.
Yeah, I understand that. Why is that personal time so important?
Because I refuse to allow myself to, I refuse to run myself into the ground or to let other people run me into the ground.
Yeah.
And so if I'm going to be effective in what I'm doing, I absolutely have to be in control and be the master of my own schedule and my own life. So I make it a point. So, for example, if we have new clients, I have a set time every day from 4 o'clock to 4 to 5 o'clock, where that is the only time people can set an appointment to have conversations as new clients. So they have a link when they email or they send an inquiry, they automatically get a link that says set an appointment. And the only time they can set an appointment is 4 o'clock or 4:30. And that's so I know my day is not going to be inundated with these random meetings all day. I know 4 to 5 is when I have, it's like, okay, I have that time set. And if nobody books at that time, free time, but I'm in control.
Yeah, that's
so.
crazy because on my last episode, we talked about how everyone is the CEO of themselves.
Yeah.
And so even if you are a student, you're still the CEO of yourself, and school is your business.
Absolutely.
And so it's just important to be aware of, how you're scheduling your time to make sure that you do have enough time for yourself.
Right.
And I want to kind of backtrack. We know all the things you do now, but how was the uprising with your life? Where did you really start at, or like in college, or
yeah?
Where does it start for you?
Well, I would say, I'll start with high school. I'll start with third grade. I mean, I've always been very ambitious, and I was blessed to have parents who are highly encouraging, and that, had no problem with bragging about me and talking about how, she's smart. So I grew up with that planted in my brain, and one of the things that I have learned since, this is just kind of a side note, is that people who aren't born with that or raised with that and don't have that kind of support can still find it intentionally and seek that out. So yes, I was absolutely blessed to not have to seek it out, but for those out there who might say, well, I didn't have parents like that, don't cancel it out, because you can find that kind of support and that kind of affirmation, and so it's almost a responsibility, if you want to be successful, to find those kinds of support systems and that kind of affirmation. So I want to say that because I don't want people to think, she had the perfect household. So I know people who did not have the perfect household, and they figured out how to build it. And so, third grade, I was a writer, and, my teachers would say, you're, the best writer in the class. By fifth grade, I started a little neighborhood newspaper. And, and I was researching actually by sixth grade publishing companies. Like, how can I publish my work? I had a whole notebook of things that I was writing that I still have, which is really cool. I need to publish some of that stuff. By high school, it was clear I was going to go to college. I was going to, I was on the track. I was to be a college athlete, softball, basketball, volleyball, track. I was in all the sports. So I ended up going to college for softball. I actually tried out for the Olympics and qualified for the Olympics, and then got pregnant. So freshman year of college, I'm pregnant, and so that kind of derailed a lot of the things. At least that's what I perceived that I was going to do. And so my parents at that point were like, "Well, we're not helping you anymore. You figure it out." And because that was a huge, they'd been building me up to everybody, and now, now she's pregnant. Yeah. So I actually stopped going to school that year because they were no longer going to pay the tuition. I had to figure it out. And so by the time my son was 10 months old, I decided to pick up everything and move about 4 hours north of where I grew up and just figure out how to enroll in school and how to get financial aid and how to, I got a job. And so I figured it out, and it wasn't easy because there was a lot of stereotypes. It was really embarrassing for me to walk up to the counter. Back then it was food stamps, now they have a card, I think. But back then it was like I had to hand out these colorful Monopoly money looking food stamps. And so it was, I was always judged and, but I was like, but I'm a college student. And they didn't know that. All they saw was a single mom. So there was a lot of me battling how people are perceiving me. But when I landed on that college campus, I got denied 3 times before I got accepted. It's one of the most difficult state colleges in California to get into, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And the last time I got my denial letter, the director of admissions wrote me and said, don't ever apply to this university again because you're not getting in. Wow. And to me, that's a challenge. Like, oh, really? Okay, let's see how that's going to work. And so I actually had built a lot of relationships, like you said, on the campus. I was highly active on campus. I was in a part of NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers, even though I was a journalism major. I was a part of the Black Student Union. I was a part of just a bunch, and so I was planning events, doing fundraisers for NSBE. I raised enough money for us to take a trip to the conference. I remember in Kansas City that year. So they all thought I was a student on campus. I wasn't a student yet. I hadn't gotten accepted. But I said, I'm going to learn this student life. I'm going to get involved. And I found out that you can take classes on campus. Kennesaw has this, where you can take classes on campus as not a student, but you're just a community member taking classes. So I chose to take journalism classes that would be in the path of my degree. So I took a full load of classes as a journalism student, but I wasn't a journalism student because I figured when I get accepted, it's already on my transcripts. So I did that, and I got straight A's. And I applied again, and that time I got accepted. So, I was like, you are not stopping me.
Signature to the man.
Yes, exactly. So I was a campus leader even before I really was technically, officially, a student. And it kind of just showed me what I'm capable of doing. And I'm hard-headed. I've always been hard-headed. I'm still hard-headed. And so I think that when you're able to see what you can accomplish, it's like there's no stopping you there.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's so many things you mentioned that I want to unpack. Just first starting out with the structure. Like you said, you don't have to have that, support, from the parents. And in order to be successful, you can still find your way intentionally. Can you explain how that's possible, or just some steps?
Yeah, I think intentional is the word. And I did a Facebook Live on intention yesterday. And I think it's all about intention. So meaning I'm going to make this thing happen. So I didn't, so maybe I had some sucky parents, and maybe they didn't have my back or whatever, but I'm going to find mentors. I'm going to create opportunities for myself. And I need to know what's missing in my life so that I can bring those things into my life. A lot of people think, I don't need anybody. I could do it by myself. But that's not how we are wired as human beings. We do need each other. We do need people. We need support. And so when I decided to go to grad school, I decided to major in college student affairs to help other people get to college, to help other people succeed in college. And my research found that students who, even if they didn't have a strong support structure, they found it. And that was a huge finding for me, because they basically figured out a way to build their house,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that, say you do have the support, your parents talk you up, they have all these great expectations, and then something happens, either you get pregnant or you end up doing drugs, you end up hanging out with the wrong people.
Yeah.
How can you bounce back from that? Because I know a lot of my peers have been through that, where they made one mistake and it cost them their whole college career.
Right.
And that just it hurts.
Yeah.
As a student at a young age. So how do you really bounce back from that?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, once you're conscious of the fact that you're on the wrong path, that's going to be the first most important thing. Is this, what happened? And I'll tell you what happened to get me back on the right track. I was already surrounded by really motivated people, aspiring, one of my best friends aspires to be president, and still, even from middle school until now. And, he was appointed by President Obama as one of the astronauts, the cohort of astronauts. So he's not playing, and he's pretty awesome. And so those were the people that I was surrounded by. I surrounded myself with those people intentionally. And it's interesting because when you do that, your personality is shaped by that, and people who are not motivated kind of fall off. And that's what's happened over the years. So so I was able to get back on track because here I am, I'm dropping out of school. I have a child. I said, I'll just figure out, I'll just figure out some 18-month program that I can go through and get a certificate and get a job. I was looking at jobs at the post office. I was looking at, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but it was no longer on the path that I had originally set for myself. So my friend reached out to me. He's like, my astronaut friend, by the way, I can't say that enough. Victor Glover, check him out. But anyway, he reached out to me and he said, what are you doing? He's like, what happened to, I'm going to be Oprah. I'm going to own Essence magazine. I'm going to, I had all these huge lofty goals. And I said, you're right. And he said, look, if you ever decide to get back into college and, just let me know and I've got your back. And so he was in San Luis Obispo and that's the reason why I went to that campus. So I literally just jumped in the car one day, showed up at his house and said, I'm here. Here I am with a 10-month-old son, and knocked on the door. I had no idea until I got there, until I lived there, that he lived in a frat house.
Oh, wow.
So he's a part of the Sigma. He's a Sigma. And so a Phi Beta Sigma, and I did not know that I was about to stay at a Phi Beta Sigma house. They were so awesome. They were perfect gentlemen, and they let me stay until I was able to find a place. I just shout out to them. They were so awesome for that. Yeah. So it has a lot to do with who you surround yourself with. So if you get off track, who are you going to surround yourself with? You want to surround yourself with people who are trying to go in the direction you're going or who are already there.
Yeah, that's one of the things that changed my life, because when I was at Kennesaw my first 2 years, they were kind of rough. I was just hanging with the wrong crowd.
Yeah.
And
I can't imagine that.
No, I really was. It's crazy. I don't even know if you know this, but my freshman year I ended up getting arrested on my birthday.
Oh,
and
my gosh.
My second sophomore year, my apartment got raided. One of my roommates got arrested. It was all over the news.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
I was always, harassed by the police, and it wasn't a good feeling.
Yeah.
And so I decided to just leave school, and I moved to Atlanta with my friends from Georgia State. And so, in Atlanta, everything moves faster.
Oh, yeah.
They were both business majors. They were business-minded. And so I started hanging around those people, and I became business-minded.
Okay.
And that's when I fell in love with entrepreneurship, but it all started with just changing my environment.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
But it's sad because, some people don't really have friends who they can lean on that are already where they want to go.
Right.
They have to kind of reach out to strangers. So what's the best way to approach that?
Yeah. Well, I never had a problem asking for help. That's not true. I have a problem with that now because I don't trust people with my stuff. I'd rather do it myself. But I guess when I say I didn't have a problem asking for help, I mean that when it came down to what I needed to advance, if I saw somebody who was doing something that I thought, wow, this is what I would like to do, I never had a problem with saying, can you show me, how did you do that? Or is there a way that I can work with you for free just to learn, So kind of like you, you don't have a problem with reaching out and asking people, how did you do that? I want to know, so I think it's about being hungry and being curious about, how did they do that, and being willing to ask that question.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's overcoming fear.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's one of the major things that stops people, because they're fearful of, what if they reject me?
Right.
I started to just welcome rejection, if they reject me, I was like, okay, cool, I can find someone else.
See, I haven't gotten there yet. That's good. That's really good.
I didn't care about rejection, and that's been very important. And so after you got into the college, what was the next step for you after the whole situation with you actually get into the college, into journalism? What was next after that?
Well, because I had already had at least a year of college under my belt, I got another year of college in. While I was waiting to get accepted, I was also attending the community college. So by the time I got in, I only needed a year and a half left because I went every term. I went summer, and I had a full load. And so I finished in about a year and a half after that. But I had such a strong community of people then that I'm still very closely connected to, that, I'm able to kind of I was able to draw upon, their success and their, camaraderie, through that process. But I was able to, I secured an internship in broadcasting. I was majoring in journalism. And then right after I graduated, I was able to get a corporate job in public relations for Universal. And it was awesome, awesome. It was awesome to get it. Like, I found I didn't like corporate at all. Like, I just don't like corporate. And so I quickly found out that I need a different type of environment. So I went into higher education and student affairs, and I worked in student leadership and in multicultural programs and things like that. And I found that it's still pretty corporate, in a lot of ways. There's still politics that happen behind the scenes that, most students or people on the outside don't necessarily see. Yeah, so I hated that part of it, but I did like the possibility of being an influence on students and having the ability to work directly with them. So really, once I stepped foot on college campus, I never left, because now I'm a college professor. So I love the college environment.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think right now in society, a lot of young people don't feel like they don't need college in order to be successful, just because of the information overload that we have.
Yeah.
You can get a degree online in a way just by all the information that's out there.
Right.
I really want to talk about the importance of higher education. Like, why do you think it's still important now?
Well, I was going to say, do I think it's still No. Well, so I will say that in terms of you need a college education to be successful, it depends on how you define success. So some people define success by making a lot of money. Some people define success by acquiring, a deeper sense of self. Some people define success as, being highly educated. So first, it depends on how you define success. If success is about making a lot of money, yes, you can make a lot of money without going to college, traditional college. You can, I have a friend who is a plumber, and he made a lot more money than I made upon graduation, and so, again, it depends on how you define it. For me, I think the value of college is personal development and growth. So it's one thing to be able to start a business and to be successful at that business, but not necessarily, I guess, go through the process that college gives you to build relationships, to understand what it means to operate within a community, and all of the different personal development things that happen are so important. So, with my my master's degree major being college student affairs, we learned about all of those different human development pieces that happen in college that don't necessarily happen outside of college. A lot of times when people don't go to college, they are not necessarily put in an environment of people that are different from them. And so you learn when you've never been around somebody who is Muslim, and now you're a roommate with somebody who's Muslim, or somebody who has a different sexual orientation. You may have been raised to believe a certain thing about that person, but when you get to have them as a roommate, then you learn a whole other set of, reality about that. So whether or not it changes your stance, it allows you to at least examine your stance before you decide to settle in on your point of view or your opinion, So you're no longer thinking that, Muslims are this way because they're not Christian, just because that's what you were told. If you conclude that after you've gotten to know them, it's you've gone through a different intellectual process than you would have gone through had you not met them. So that's what college does for us.
It's more of learning about yourself than kind of the traditional education that you learn.
You get that in addition, so it's like a perk, yeah. Now, depending on what you learn is dependent on the person. Some people, go to class and they play on their phone and they, just kind of multitask, and they're like, okay, class done, and check it off the list. Other people digest it and take it seriously and apply it. So and both people end up graduating, which is frustrating to me as a professor, but.
So what's your message to those students who just go day to day, go into class, and don't really ingest it? They don't, learn, get relationships.
Yeah.
Go in there it's just a part of it.
It's a done. Yeah. I see that a lot, and especially now that I work with graduate students. I work in a master's degree in the doctoral program. Actually, the doctoral program students, they take it very seriously. The master's degree program are just like, let me just get this done, check it off the list. And I just think that is unfortunate, and it's their loss, because there's an opportunity to really digest this stuff and apply it. There's so many things in the world that's happening right now that needs attention, that needs people to take the educational process seriously so that we can do something about it. Practical things like the water problem in Detroit. If you're an engineer, I don't want you sitting in classroom vegetating away. I want you to pay attention to what you're learning so that we can solve problems like that.
Oh, wow.
You know?
So it's really just being aware that you can solve problems.
Absolutely.
That's why we're here. We're here to solve problems. We're not here just to live and die,
Right.
We're here to make an impact.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, like hitting on that, one of those ways to just find what problem you want to solve, it has to do with your passion.
Yes.
I think you found early that your passion was writing.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of found early too. I knew that my passion was writing, but I didn't really realize it. It didn't click with me until college, I want to say.
Yeah.
And so how can you find that passion? Say you are in college and you don't know what your passion is, you're lost. How can you really figure that out?
Yeah, well, and it's funny, I knew that my passion was writing early on, but I didn't know what that would do for the broader world. Of course, at one point I thought, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a Pulitzer Prize winner, but what does that do for people? How does that help anybody? And it wasn't until high school that I realized I want to use my writing to help people change their lives. And I was very clear on that. So it's crazy to see myself fast forward, 10 years later. No, it's not 10 years later, but fast forward, what is it? 20 years later? It's crazy. And see that I'm doing exactly what I envisioned for myself in high school, that I want to help people with my writing. So, and if you're not, I say start with what you're good at. I was really good at writing. I've always been good at writing. And if you can focus in on that, eventually, don't rush it. Don't get frustrated if you don't know what it is right now. Stay focused on that and keep doing that. And eventually it's going to branch out into, a purpose and branch out into what that can mean, for the greater good.
That's awesome. And that's one of the main purposes for this show is to help people to figure out what that passion is.
Mm-hmm.
and create a vision, because like you said, it's crazy for you to realize, to see that you're now where you dreamed about earlier.
Yeah.
I know that's crazy, and that's just awesome. And so now, what does your day-to-day life look like now?
So I have a daughter who's in middle school, and I'm so grateful that her middle school doesn't start till 9. So I'm dreading high school because that starts at 6:45 or something crazy. But it allows for a lot of flexibility. So I take her to school. I hit the gym every day. So I do not allow anybody to have a meeting with me at 9. So when people propose 9, even when I'm at meeting at work, at my day job, which is the professor job, and they say, okay, you guys, so when are we going to meet? How about 9? I already have an obligation, so I am very serious about my time. So I have that time, and I don't usually start meetings until 11 because it gives me plenty of time, get the gym, get my breakfast. I don't play with breakfast either because for me, breakfast is about balance and health, and I want to make sure that I'm not just grabbing something from fast food and wolfing it down, but that I'm taking time to actually cook and prepare a breakfast for myself. And so I'm pretty fierce with my time. And so I'll start my meetings, around after 11, and I'll work until about 3:30, 4, and then I pick up my daughter and I start all the mom stuff after that. So my day is probably, I guess, the work day 11 to about 4. And that's just if I want it to be. If I don't want it to be, if I want to just rest, I rest. If I want to walk around the mall, I walk around the mall. But I try to have full control of my schedule.
Yeah, and that's a great thing about being an entrepreneur, because you can control your time.
Yes.
I find that really awesome.
I love it.
So when you were building your businesses, can you talk about a failure that you ran up against and how you overcame that?
Yeah, so I have struggled. So my publishing company, we're going into the 7th year. The coaching academy, we're going to the 5th year. And so I think we've crossed the threshold of when businesses usually fail. But I think the biggest struggle that I've had is figuring out where to put the money And, and so I've had a couple of investors. And in one case, I think I did well with the money. In another case, I think I bombed with the money. And in both cases, they were a significant amount of money. So when I bombed with the money, like, that kills me. I still banging my head against the wall, like, why did I do that? But it is a lesson learned. And I know but I don't know how I would have known what to do with that money because I wasn't highly experienced. I was trying to just kind of navigate the waters and figure out, how does this business thing work? Yeah. And if I pour my money into this, I'm doing the math and running the numbers like, oh yeah, that can be a return huge, and it really didn't work out that way. But in hindsight, it's loud and clear where the money should have gone. But that's only because I now have more experience and I'm learning about what works and what doesn't work.
Right.
So,
that's
yeah.
Awesome. And so you talk about investors. Can you talk about how you found an investor for your business, and is that important?
Yeah. So absolutely, it's it's very important, but it's not essential. I mean, it's not like a requirement. For when I first published my book, I was also launching my publishing company, and I had an entire plan written out, and that was part of the workshop that we talked about, the business plan. And so I had a business plan laid out for my book, not for the publishing company, but for my book and how I would make sure that the book was successful and how we're going to market it and all of that. And I think it was a pretty good plan. I was hosting a workshop in Atlanta, and I had a gentleman sitting in the workshop who continued to talk about how much money he makes and how he's invested in companies all over the world. And, I'm sitting there like, first I was annoyed, like, why are you bragging? But then I was like, no, don't be stupid. Like, this guy is talking about how he invests. So after the session, I usually have a line of people who want to talk to me, and I'm watching him at the corner of my eye walking out of the room, and I'm like, I can't let this guy leave. So and here's where preparation meets opportunity, because I already had the business plan written and ready to go. And I run out there in my heels in 90-degree heat out in the parking lot, and I'm like, there he is. And I run up to him. I said, so I wanted to talk to you about your investments. And I have a book and a publishing company, and I'd really love your support. And, I would love to share my business plan with you. And he said, yeah, I followed your work. And that's another thing about what you never know who's watching you. So, apparently he said, I've followed what you've been doing. I'm very impressed. He is a highly successful businessman who works in banking. He's got a high level position in the government right now. I'm not going to say who he is, but he's done quite well. I had no idea that he had all of that potential. So I said, I would love it if you'd be willing to support what I'm doing. And he said, how much do you need? And I said, well, the business plan lays out about $50,000. And he said, yes. And I kept talking. I said, and so here's what I'm thinking about. And if you'd be willing, he said, no. I said, yes. And I'm like, wait, what? On the spot, without even having seen the business plan. And he said, just email it to me, and I will have a check cut to you by Friday.
Wow.
So I emailed it to him from my phone as I'm walking away, and he had that thing before either of us left the parking lot. And so, and that was the investment I did well. I was smart with that money.
And it's crazy, because what you just explained is really taking on a visionary mindset, like having something prepared just in case opportunity might come.
Absolutely.
Because when opportunity does come, you want to make sure that you are prepared. You don't want to miss the opportunity and say, I knew I should have.
I need to write this report real quick.
Right now,
yeah.
But it's important to already have that ready. And that's something that I preach to my listeners within the first episode. Like, taking on a visionary mindset is basically like living out something before it actually gets here.
Yes.
Right. And so that's what I'm doing with this podcast. Like, eventually I want to get to the point where I, can't have sponsors. I can't, let this lead me to speaking engagements. But right now it's none of that. It's just me doing it out of my passion and just doing it with the hope of that, months from now I will get those opportunities.
With the preparation. It's more than hope, but yeah. Yeah.
And I think I remember you said that the investor, he didn't even want the money back from you.
Yeah. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. And so I want to ask you, we're almost done, but I want to ask you a few more questions. And one of those questions is, if you can give advice to your 21-year-old self, what would that be?
Yeah, nobody's perfect. Don't be so hard on yourself. I was that perfect kid. I was the kid who was in church and preaching to all my peers about, wait till you get married, don't be physically involved with people. And then lo and behold, I'm the one who gets pregnant. So, and it wasn't that I was lying. I just got pregnant the first time. I am, I don't get away with anything. So, yeah, y'all are college students, right? So I don't get away with anything. And it's funny because I think that's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because me not getting away with anything keeps me on the right path. And when I veer off, it's like, oh, okay, I got to get back on track. So my advice to my 21-year-old self is that everything, you are who you are, and you're an amazing person with drive, and you've got all of these amazing qualities. If you use those strengths that you have, you're going to be able to get to where you want to go, no matter what stumbling stones come in your path. Yes, you got pregnant. Yes, you dropped out of school for a minute, but if you hone in on those strengths that you've always had, you're gonna be just fine. Throughout the course of your life.
That's awesome advice. Awesome. And so one last question. So I'm releasing a book this month. It's called The Positive Affirmation Guide. Mm-hmm. And it's basically about using positive affirmations to get you where you want to go in life. And so I want to know how important positive affirmations are to you.
Very important. When I talk about intention and being intentional about things, being intentional also means speaking things, speaking out loud, speaking to yourself. My mom laughs at me all the time. She's like, "Are you talking to yourself?" And I say, "Yes, of course I am." Like, why is that weird? Because I have to speak life into everything that I'm doing. And so whether the affirmations are in writing and in a place that's visual for me, or I'm more a verbal person in terms of the affirmations, but I've seen people who do the Post-it notes and other things like that. But yes, you have to surround yourself around positivity and the possibilities that exist for you, because we need that reminder constantly. There's one thing about our brains, and that's that we are naturally wired to see the negative. We're naturally wired to seek out the negative, and that's a survival tactic. That's, if you think about it, if we're in the wilderness, we need to know if there's something negative out there so that we can protect ourselves. So we have to be intentional about the positive. We actually have to train our brains to look for the positive things.
Yeah, that's super important. And I preach this all the time, but it's good to get someone else's opinion on affirmations, because it's so real. Like, I see it in my life every day. And as soon as I wake up, I'm like, oh man, I can go back to sleep for another hour. But it's like, I had to tell myself, no, I'm a person that wakes up early in the morning. This is who I am. This is my identity.
That's good.
I have to do that, right? And so, just as a token of my appreciation, I have what I call a positive affirmation bracelet.
I saw those online. I love that.
So this one says, tell me how far I'll go. Because you have done so many more things, but I know the ceiling, is super high for you. And so I just can't wait to see what more you do. And I want to thank you again for having you on here.
Yeah.
On the podcast. And this was so great. And so how can these listeners find you? Because you say you do Facebook Live.
So I do. So I'm on social media as Empowered Writer. So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram that way. I'm mostly active on Facebook and Twitter. So Facebook, I'm Pamela Antoinette Larde. You can find me there. And through the Coaching Academy. If you go to the academyofcreativecoaching.com, you'll be able to find me there. And I do want to say, I didn't mention this, but we recently had our accreditation upgraded. So we are the only Black female-owned coaching academy that's accredited in the country and possibly in the world. I'm still looking to make sure, but it is a predominantly white male-dominated field. And so for me to kind of step in there is pretty huge.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So yeah,
awesome. And so there it is, guys. Episode with Dr. Pamela Antoinette. Make sure you guys reach out to her on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of those things, and just hear the information that she has, because it's all gold. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thanks.
And so this part of the episode is called the Visionary Minute, where I share 5 things that I learned from the previous episode. And so number 1 is that you can build your own house. No matter where you came from, what your support system was, you can intentionally build a house, build your own support system, build your own foundation, which is very important. And number 2, there are problems in the world that need our help. And so primarily college students, we should be intentional about our education, because there are bigger problems in the world that need our help, And number 3, start with what you're good at. Eventually, it'll branch out to a purpose. And so this is important when it comes to finding your passion, identifying your passion, which is what this show is all about. It starts with figuring out what you're good at and then just mastering that craft, and eventually it'll turn to purpose. And number 4, protect your time. She was saying how strategic she is with her time, because it's very important. She doesn't want anybody to affect her energy negatively, and so she protects her time. And number 5, be prepared for when an opportunity presents itself, because you never know who's watching. And so I thought this was super important just because, like I said in the first episode, taking a visionary mindset is doing something with the intentions of an opportunity coming in the future. Even though opportunity is not there presently, there will be one that comes, and you want to be ready when it does come. And so there it is, y'all, Visionary Minute. 5 things that I learned from the interview with Dr. Pamela. There it is. Y'all have a blessed one. Peace.